All right, so as usual on Sundays, we ask you to share with us which story really stood out for you in the week that was. Share your views with us via WhatsApp. That number is 072-110-5584, or give us a call on 010-594-6010. To talk us through some of the big stories of the week, we're joined in studio by social commentator Donovan E Williams, back with us again. Good to have you back in studio, Donovan.
Thank you, Nalini.
Also joining us is international relations expert Oscar van Heerden. Oscar, good evening to you, and thank you so much for joining us. And Reputation First MD Tshepo Matseba also joining us via video link. Donovan, I'm going to start here in studio because my goodness, there's so much to talk about this week, right?
Yeah.
You know, just as you're sort of looking at what the relations are looking like between the US and South Africa, and also what government needs to be doing to mitigate, you know, where we find ourselves, there's almost now a conversation about individual personalities, where you've got an Elon Musk saying that Julius Malema must be declared an international criminal. I mean, what do you make of that discussion, and certainly how it's you know, developing?
Well, Musk certainly believes in freedom of expression, even if he has got no expertise on any matter. He just seems to think that he can speak on anything. And I think he's thriving in this environment currently, Musk. He recognizes the person he's serving, loves chaos, confusion, and then to sound aggressive. And so he has made it a point that every week he's going to say something that gives his boss, Donald Trump, something to be angry about, something to be chaotic about. So he's done a few things already, and now he's played up to Malema, in a sense. And you had the two-page statement from the EFF. But it's a sideshow. It's a sideshow on the overall other matters that affect South Africa, that's coming from the United States government. And Musk himself, you know, in the US at the moment, he is regarded as, and I'm thinking about my article, he's regarded as a Voldemort character in a sense.
But he's Harry Potter.
Yes. He's regarded as this bad guy to a bad guy. You know, the bad guy of Musk to the bad guy of Trump. Now, we can't get caught up in this. We can't get caught up in this individualized politics that stems from Twitter, for that matter, or X. And it's a pity the EFF responded so quickly to it, because Musk wants that response. It gets him more. It gets more coverage, and we start trying to put out little fires all over the place. We can't ignore what the United States, under possibly the influence of Musk, is doing, but we can't train on Musk. They have, as the American government, they have decided to use one of the richest billionaires, maybe the richest one in the world, to do certain things. It's their task to rein him in. And we should focus on what we require in South Africa. He should not pick on Julius Malema. There's no reason for him to. But if he wishes to, he can say anything he wants to. He said harsh things about so many people. And he's going to continue doing so. That's the United States problem. Elon Musk is not South African. He's not South Africa's problem. He's the United States problem, and he will prove to be a problem for them. They may not think that now, but they shall think that in the not too distant future. That's my opinion. Yeah,
you know, you talk about how the EFF responded so quickly, and I actually have got the statement here. I want to read a little bit from it, because some of the wording here, right? It reads, open quote: "As part of the general hysteria that has overtaken governance in the United States of America, Musk has assumed the role of a global billionaire maniac whose grotesque wealth has overwhelmed him and made him think of himself as a supreme leader of not only the Oval Office, but of all nations of the world." I mean, it's really strong words that are being used there. And Tshepo, I want to bring you in here, because, you know, as these conversations take place, where you've got, you know, Elon Musk tweeting, and then the EFF responding, and then there's the bigger conversation around funding to South Africa by the US government, and even, you know, the utterances, for instance, by AfriForum before the press briefing, during the press briefing yesterday. I immediately think, with all of this happening, is this good or bad for brand South Africa?
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity. No, I mean, at this stage, the level of conversation and the quality of conversation is not constructive and cannot be good for the image of South Africa, even though it is clear that a lot of what is being said, he wants to drag different people around the world through the mud And those who will survive the storm, the countries, the individuals that will survive the storm, and particularly South Africa as a brand, is to distance ourselves from the mud and not really get into the ring with him, because he is exercising, and both of them have done the same. Trump and President Trump and Elon Musk is to lead through X, lead through those few characters online and cause chaos and bring you into a boxing match, but without telling you what the fight is about, without considering facts, and importantly for a president, especially for a sitting president, without following protocol, diplomatic processes, creates a space for negativity. But I think South Africa's handling of this will depend on us as a country having a coordinated communication strategy, which controls the flow of information, controls who gets to speak, when, why, and how, and formulate a core message on the position of the South African government. And you almost want the same to come out of South African business, to formulate a core message about this is where we stand on the issue, so that we don't end up having ministers within the context of this government of national unity, forgetting that word called unity and saying different things in local and international media, thereby diluting the brand even further, or diluting the message even further. I think it's important, and it was very important for South Africa through President Cyril Ramaphosa to articulate some of these things and say we will not be dragged into the mud, we will not be bullied. And I think he's been trying to be consistent with that message. But some of the ministers within the GNU are already beginning to talk, and that is going to create a communication challenge for South Africa, because if you respond to the mud, you are already in the mud. And hopefully it is best to articulate, to formulate a position of government, formulate a position of business, formulate a position of the country, and then start singing from that same hymn sheet consistently to minimize adverse effects on South Africa's economy and South Africa as a brand.
Yeah, I mean, you've got the former Minister for International Relations, Naledi Pandor, who said that really what we need is more diplomacy in all of this, right? And she's quoted, we should do more diplomatic work, we should continue with our efforts to build good relations. This is in an interview she did with News 24. And Oscar, I want to bring you in here, because this is essentially really what's at the core of it, is how are we engaging with the US and the platforms that are available for us to do so. I mean, you've got AfriForum that holds a statement, a briefing, and they release a statement and they say that they will request that punitive measures that Donald Trump wants to introduce against South Africa should rather target senior ANC leaders directly and not South Africa's residents. There's something to be said about how a group like AfriForum has, such sway, right, even in the US, and how it interacts with South Africa, Oscar.
Yeah, you know, Naledi, they have that kind of sway because there's a resurgence of right-wing, extreme right-wing conservatism and right-wing ideologues globally. And they have now found a leader, and that leader is what is commonly referred to as the leader of the free world, which is the president in the West Wing of the United States of America, under Donald Trump. And this is why any other leader of the United States, whether it is Biden, Obama, Clinton, Bush, etc., because they don't subscribe to such extreme right-wing policies and politics, there's no way AfriForum or Solidarity was going to find resonance with them. But unfortunately, there is a coalition and an emergence of these extreme right-wing, not only in the United States, but also in Europe. And it's finding expression. That's why AfriForum and Solidarity is being listened to and is being believed, even though they are spreading misinformation, disinformation, and quite honestly, negative propaganda.
Yeah, you know, Donovan, you wrote such an interesting piece for the Mail and Guardian, and you know, you talk about how in the US and in South Africa, our politics have become a weapon of mass destruction. And I think there's a bigger conversation to be had here about our economics. Right, and really, what is behind all of this? A lot of people obviously saying, well, you know, part of the motivation in, you know, our relationships, you know, with the US turning has a lot to do with being outspoken about the situation in Gaza. But there's also the economic trajectory of South Africa and how important it is in this big discussion.
Overwhelmingly throughout the world, economies are not doing well. Liberal economies or liberal democracy economies are definitely not doing well. The rich, the very rich, the billionaires have been making a lot more money than they've ever made. You know, during this election campaign of the United States, Musk and other oligarchs have made billions. Their wealth has exponentially increased. This is what I want to throw in, my lady, and hopefully both Tshepo and Oscar would also look at this. Since COVID, the post-COVID era, what we have found, and the roots of it is found in the Biden administration, not necessarily the Trump one, because we had a 4-year Trump from 2016 to 2020. What we found is how easily matters can be weaponized. And that's what we are seeing today. The difference is, Roots and all of them from AfriForum and Solidarity, they went to the US, to the White House, exclaiming pre-expropriation bill for that matter, claiming white farmers are being targeted by the government and all sorts of lies. They did this before. To
talk about farm killings as well, yes, also coming up, yeah.
Yes, they did this before, but it wasn't weaponized in the way it was. And Biden, under his administration, showed that you can weaponize policy when he tried to deal with Ukraine, with the matters on Ukraine and Russia. They weaponized sanctions. They weaponized economic levers. They weaponized institutions. They weaponized long-standing policies. And Trump has learned from that. These roots are unfortunately not found just in right-wing ideologues. And I agree with Oscar. There's a rise of right-wing populism, ideologues across, because of failing economies, which you are raising. But it is not just within the right wing. It's in a false left wing, which is centrist, like the Democrat Party, like in the US, United States, like the Labour Party in the UK, which have taught the right-wingers that you can weaponize matters. And what Trump has done, he's taken woke issues, he's taken cancel culture, he's weaponized them to the extent of he's always got something to do. So now he's taken something that AfriForum and whatever we're raising, you know, they tell themselves lies and they believe these lies, right? It's quite treasonous, to be quite honest. It's our contradictions, our own contradictions of our transition. We know our contradictions. We know we haven't dealt with the economic matters left over from apartheid. We know we haven't transformed this economy. We know that even though you have an employment equity bill, it is unfairly interpreted in the difference between the private sector and the public sector is real. We hear this all the time. We hear it from our people. Communities themselves, poor communities themselves, raise similar matters. We know that there's a big crime issue. That crime issue affects everybody, not just Afrikaners. And what has happened? Trump has taken that and weaponized it because it is not about minorities, it's not about majorities. Trump and others are white supremacists. And unfortunately, the world we live in is so unequal that if you want to supposedly transform your economy, you want to have the trajectory, you're not just kissing the ring, you actually have to lose your dignity. And that's something as a country that we shouldn't be able to walk down that path. We have to be stubborn, we have to pull together, and we have to do it properly. And now we've got to show our leadership, not just amongst leaders, but within the country as a whole.
Yeah, okay, we have to be stubborn, you say,
yes,
right? And Tshepo, this is where I bring you in, because then the president on Thursday delivers a State of the Nation address. We knew that the issue of, you know, our position in the global sort of order is going to somewhat come up in that Sona. And I wonder if you feel that the president gave this matter enough attention or detail. You know, he talked about fundamental shifts underway, you know, that affect every aspect of human life. He says, in the face of challenges, we're witnessing the rise of nationalism, protectionism, the pursuit of narrow interests and decline of common cause. We, of course, will be resilient and not be bullied. That's what everybody's been saying, you know, since Thursday. Everybody's talking about how we are not going to be bullied. Did it hit the mark? Was it vague? You know, did he address the matter? And could there have been a better way?
I think it's a difficult position to be in for him on that specific platform to engage this matter. I would have wanted to hear him differently when he wears his hat, political hat, as the ANC president. I would want to see what he would say. But in the context of Sona, I think he did the best that he could do within the confines of what he had. And remember, what was important about Sona was to articulate our domestic priorities and our government program for the financial years and give the nation a hope and an indication of what needs to happen. I think that was delivered well. And I think that, you know, he articulated our position as a country that is not going to get into the ring and fist fight and emotional renting on social media, but rather that we will use diplomatic mechanisms to engage constructively. And that message about not being bullied was important, not only in the context of President Donald Trump in the US, but it was also important in the context of Paul Kagame, President Kagame in Rwanda, and the kind of narrative that he was also spreading, really directly challenging South Africa on a specific position, also without providing substantive insights, so that the reader could understand actually the timeline of his thought process. So on both on those fronts, I think that he tried at best to handle matters as far as we can. I think there is still opportunity to have a coordinated communication response from South Africa so that we can determine if this is our position and this is our messaging, how often are we going to articulate those messages, what happens behind the scenes, and what do we articulate in public, so that we don't leave room for speculation. Because if you don't communicate consistently and you have the different ministers, as I say, from this GNU context saying different things, you get into a trouble of being misunderstood. Because here you are dealing with extremists who are using a social media platform to press a button and create chaos. And we know that you know, not all investors or stakeholders globally actually take time to go and do research. So the headlines often influence perceptions, and those perceptions often influence decisions that are taken in boardrooms about where priorities are at from an investor perspective. And so there is a really opportunity and a necessity for South Africa to craft a coordinated communication strategy so that we speak with one voice and drive a far more sustainable message across that demonstrates that we live according to our constitutional democratic values.
I immediately think about, you know, the position of DIRCO Minister Ronald Lamola, not an enviable position at all, Oscar. But I want to bring you in here because then I would ask you to, you know, almost, I suppose, if you can, you know, throw the bones, for instance, on what happens with the US's politics moving forward. I mean, it's not just the executive order looking at aid coming to South Africa, but it's executive orders all round, right? President Donald Trump is not, he's not taking his foot off the accelerator, it seems, and it hasn't even been a month that he's been in the Oval Office. I mean, one of the executive orders looking at, you know, the reversal of paper straws, for instance, right? I mean, the world is looking at this. What do you think this all does for his presidency?
You know, Naledi, Donald Trump is a businessman. He is a transactional leader. The United States of America, incorporated as a company, is in trouble. Its debt levels are too high. And if it continues on the current trajectory, it will be insolvent. precisely because they have decided to weaponize the US dollar and sanction so many countries, including Russia, seizing its foreign reserves, which was held in European banks, and having a plethora of sanctions, removing them from the SWIFT transaction and payment system internationally. These were unprecedented sanctions. And what the US did, together with some European countries, is tell the world that unless you follow our dictum, unless you follow our dictates, this is what we will do to you. And somehow the United States thought that there wouldn't be a response. Well, there was. Countries in BRICS, Russia, China, India, etc., are exploring an alternative payment system internationally. They are exploring moving away from the US dollar because the US has weaponized it, trading in their own local currencies, and so on and so forth. So the business rescue practitioner called Donald Trump, wanting to save his country and its customers, citizens, have decided that they need to go into business rescue. And what he does is he comes with extreme positions, with threats. We are going to remove all the Palestinians in Gaza. We are going to withdraw from NATO. We are going to impose 100% tariffs on BRICS countries. And now in our case, we are going to also exclude you from AGOA, and we are going to put in measures in place where we withdraw funding and so very extreme. And the idea, Naledi, is to bring those countries, those governments to the negotiating table so that he can put his true intentions on the table. In our case, the true intention is not land expropriation. When Ramaphosa and Lamola get to the White House, he's going to say, no, put that on the back burner. What we are here to discuss is your case against Israel, and we want you to withdraw it. What we are here to discuss is Iran and Russia, as it has now been made clear in the executive order. That is the true intention. He threatens because he wants to negotiate a better deal with Canada and Mexico in terms of NAFTA. The miscalculation that Trump, Elon, and others are making is that they genuinely believe, they are in denial that they are declining empire. They genuinely think they are the most important person in the room. And unfortunately, the world is responding. It's calling Donald Trump's bluff. And that's why China came out and said, if you don't support the G20 of the South African presidency, then we will support it. And that is going to continuously happen throughout. I think this strategy is going to backfire.
Sure. That's interesting. Yeah, do you want to let me just take a quick call, if you'll allow me. Sega is calling in from Alberton. Of course, we're taking your calls on 0105946010. Be part of the conversation. Sega in Alberton, good evening.
Evening, madam. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you so much for calling. What are your thoughts?
Let me also extend my greetings to your guests out there.
Yes.
My thought is clear. Number one, South Africa is being punished because of its stance on Israel, nothing else. AfriForum, noise, yes, it might add, but the fact of the matter is that our stance against Israel is the major cause of all this. If we really need to achieve transformation, a real transformation in South Africa and the continent, let us try to move away from the West, more especially the United States of America. I know it's not going to be easy economically, but we will learn along the way. We've got an endowment of resources as a continent as a whole. We also need to capitalize around that.
Yeah. And some strides have been made, Seka, in, getting to, as we walk towards more implementation of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. Thank you so much for calling in, Seka. Taking more calls, 0105946010. You wanted to step in?
Yeah, I want to step in. Even Seka is also covering part of what I was going to, not covering, but leading into that. Robert Mugabe had a Look East program. It didn't work. It helped a bit. For a short period of time, it didn't work.
That's where a lot of the fear comes from, right?
Yeah. And the last time I was on here, we spoke about trying to paint South Africa as a Zimbabwe 2.0. The truth of the matter is the African National Congress, the liberation movement as a whole, in the 1980s, against apartheid, as much as they were hated, legally for that matter, by the United States leadership, Ronald Reagan, as well as the UK leadership, Thatcher, who had labeled them terrorists, put them on a terrorist list. Nelson Mandela was a persona non grata, etc. They never spoke up against those governments and never spoke out against those countries. The ANC was famously non-aligned. It was part of the non-aligned movement. South Africa does not have a neutral foreign policy. It has a non-aligned foreign policy. It is not pro-China. It is not pro-Russia. It's not anti-West, anti-United States. It is not. And we need to continue on that path. That's the transactional part that bothers people like Donald Trump and others who are transactional persons. South Africa's non-aligned status and being part of the non-aligned countries in the South, there's a famous African saying that when the elephants fight, the grass suffers. We are the grass. The countries of the South are the grass. There's big fights happening with China, with the United States, and Oscar is completely correct. This is a declining power. They can see it. China has now, the last part of the United States' comparative edge was the super chips. That has been blown out of the water. The NVIDIA company in the US with the super chips, but now with DeepSeek, with having little money to be able to create AI technology, all Google and all of them were looking forward to that. Right now, China has caught up the United States, not just economically, but technologically.
For a fraction of the price.
For a fraction of the price. That means the decline will be accelerated. And that Trump recognizes, that Biden recognized, for that matter, that the matter of Israel, the matter of Iran is all about China. It's not necessarily just Israel and Iran, although there's historical enmity towards those countries, and not Israel, of course, Palestinian liberation. That they need to stop the rise of China. China needs to say that we will still regard you as in charge. And the problem is, China is historically and will not be. It's not an imperial state. It's not a colonial state. So let's take Canada, for example. And this is the mistake Biden made with Ukraine. They forced Europe, in particular Germany and others, not to use Russian gas. By forcing them not to use Russian gas, it meant Russia sends that gas now to China, which needs cheap energy. So they helped China. Right now, 97 to 98% of the crude oil from Canada goes to the United States. The United States doesn't need the oil, actually, but it goes to the United States. So now, because of the threat, the weaponizing of NAFTA on the basis of fentanyl and so forth, by Donald Trump, Canada right now is increasing its supply to the EU, and it's saying, yes, we are ready for this. But more than that, it's got a pipeline across British Columbia, the state of British Columbia, in Canada, not in American soil, that will supply Japan and China. They will supply them crude oil now as well. So everything the US is doing in their efforts to stop China by putting pressure on particular countries and areas, like even South Africa, in being in BRICS and so forth, is actually going to backfire because they're pushing more countries towards supplying China. And this is going to happen all the time. And it's going to continue to be like this until they recognize that they do not need to be in charge for the world to be a better place. They actually have to want to believe that they want to make the world a better place.
Do you know, I want to get into the opportunities that we see then for South Africa. As you talk about, well, this pressure being put on South Africa is actually leading us in the opposite direction of what Trump would like to see take place, which is the idea you put forward. But let's quickly take Justice in Lephalale. Justice, good evening.
Good evening, lady, and good evening to our guest there.
Thank you so much for calling. Your thoughts?
Naledi, we have got a problem here. One, it's Solidarity and AfriForum are agents of America and Europe. They are spying on Africa, and in particular South Africa. Number two, Africa has got all the resources that are needed. We have got the platinums, we've got the diamonds, we've got the gold. We don't need to be beggars of foreign countries. What we need to do, we have got a buying power as Africans. Let's have our minerals being worked in Africa and go out there as a finished product. We are not going to beg. Now, what we are doing now, we are allowing our minerals to go out, and these people control our economy, controls the prices of our minerals, and they bring them back at an expensive price. And that is what put us at the back foot, whereby we cannot sustain our economies and rely on lending money from them. Yeah. So it is a wake-up call. What Trump is doing to South Africa now, it's a wake-up call to Africa that we must be dependent. We must be independent, We must be independent and rely on ourselves. And Africa has got a buying power that can sustain Africans.
Yeah, okay.
That is what I wanted to comment on.
Justice, thank you so much for that contribution. We really appreciate it. Taking more calls on 010-594-6010. So, Justice, there in that call saying this is an opportunity for South Africa and for Africa. But when we come back, let's actually look at where some of those green shoots are, right? As relations between South Africa and the US are a big talking point, the lessons that we take and the opportunities that we then jump on the other side of this. Stay with us. Welcome back. We continue our discussion looking at some of the top talking points of the week. And of course, relations between South Africa and the US, really, really important and top of mind as we wrap up the week. And we're taking your calls on 010-594-6010. Roland is on the line in Nelson Mandela Bay. Roland, good evening.
Good evening and good evening to your guests. Thanks for a lovely show.
Appreciate
Hi,
it.
Donovan. How are you doing?
He's my brother.
Okay. He can hear you. He says you're his brother. Go ahead, Roland.
Yeah. Okay. So I just wanted to. I think your guests are quite right that this must be put within the context of the global economy. Since 1945 and the Bretton Woods Conference, where the G7 and in particular the USA and the UK entrenched their economic hegemony on the world. For the past 6, almost 7 decades, almost 90% of trade was controlled by the group of 7 countries. However, over the past 10 years or so, with the awakening of the sleeping giant of China, that situation has changed fairly dramatically. U.S. debt currently sits in excess of $30 trillion. It's a staggering amount of money, Naledi. UK is second in terms of world debt. I think theirs is about $10 trillion at the moment. So the group of 7 countries which had controlled the world's economy for a long time are now feeling the insecurity of the fact that they're no longer in control of the world's economy. The BRICS countries, the 5 original BRICS countries now make up in excess of 30% of the world's GDP. Yep. So all of these machinations and actions and decisions that's been taken by the USA, whether it's in Ukraine or in Palestine or in Africa or in terms of South America, is all as a response to it losing its grip on the economy of the world. I'll leave my comment at that and have your guests respond.
Thank you so much for calling. It's interesting, right, Roland, essentially painting a picture there of a changing world. Taking more calls. Ibrahim is in Richards Bay. Ibrahim, good evening.
Hi, good evening, Mama. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you so much for calling. Talk to us.
Thank you for taking my call. Yeah, good evening to your panelists as well. Look, I think we all agree in one position, as to say, I think it's high time that South Africa stops the over-reliance on foreign countries like your American and your European countries. Now, the formation of BRICS is a blessing in disguise for us. It's time that we turn ourselves to BRICS, and form our own currency has been proposed. Perhaps we need to speed up that particular process, because now the situation is this is nothing to do with this new law that has been has been signed for land land reform, but it's more to do what has been happening in Palestine. Recently we've heard Donald Trump saying that America is going to take over the Gaza Strip. Where in the world you've ever heard of such a thing that another country go and take other people's country? It can't be correct. So it's about time that we stand firm and move ourselves away from these bullies, particularly America, because America thinks it owns everybody. So it's just going to go around bullying everybody around. You know, so we've got an opportunity here that the particular process, what we call proposal that was made with regards of forming our own currency with BRICS. Perhaps the countries, they need to start pushing on the particular, what we call particular proposal. They need to speed up the particular process.
What's interesting, though, Ibrahim, is that that's exactly what Trump has been, very outspoken about. But I'm going to have to leave it there, Ibrahim. Thank you so much for calling. Your contribution, really valuable. Taking more calls, 010-594-6010. Let's see the WhatsApps, though, that have come in already. Charles Boyson says, AfriForum must be charged with treason for bringing South Africa into disrepute and trying to overthrow the government. Charles, thanks so much for that one. Luyanda Mbebe in Tembisa says, I would like to second Julius Malema because this matter of land doesn't include the USA, Trump and AfriForum. It seems to be completely confused because nothing has happened yet in South Africa. Actually, we need the land. Luyanda, thank you for sending in that WhatsApp. Let's see. Andreas Biela says, I rejected Trump's offer for Afrikaners to move to the US. Trump and Musk collectively threaten the global ecosystem. Wow. Potentially costing the world billions. Andres, thank you so much for that. One of the things that has been incredible to observe over the past few days is the amount of white South Africans that have come back and said, this is home, in their various groupings and machinations. And I think that's really quite a moment to really reflect on. But that one WhatsApp says, AfriForum, I think it was Charles Boyson, who says AfriForum must be charged with treason. What do you make of that? I mean, what can be done to deal with AfriForum?
AfriForum can be charged with treason as it stands because there's, it was just pointed out by actually another white Afrikaner who put out a TikTok, Bianca, and where she points out there's the treason under the South African law in terms of the Writers' Assemblies Act 17 of 1956, so it's an apartheid law, has three things and three parts of it. I won't read all of it, but the one that is important is instigating foreign intervention in internal affairs with intentions to harm the state. But I think this will just play into the victim status that AfriForum trucks on. They have a membership of around, with about 350,000 people. They do not make up all the Afrikaners, or the majority of them for that matter, not even necessarily white people. And they members pay fees every month, which allows their leadership to travel and cause this problem. So it's a career. But I think civil society needs to take care of AfriForum. I think the National Social Dialogue, AfriForum must come to the National Social Dialogue, and it must debate with civil society. South Africans must talk, not just under the guise of government. This is important. South African civil society, of course, for all hues and complexions and all ideologies, need to talk. And AfriForum must be sorted out. They can't talk in their cocoon, being given nice entrances towards the union buildings, our West Wing as such, and so forth. They mustn't be given the easy way through to access to power, because that's what they really want, an unreal access of influence. So they become a Musk-like character within the South African political milieu. So in the National Social Dialogue, AfriForum must be there, but South African civil society. One of the things that Trump and together with Musk, what they've done is exposed things that have been known. We knew about the National Endowment for Democracy, which was a front, or which is a front for the CIA, which funds different color revolutions all over the world and NGOs and so forth. But they showed what the USAID has been doing. That Trump has exposed it massively, or under Trump. Yeah. And in South Africa, and unwittingly, and we want the LGBTQI plus community and civil society organizations to take note of this. Have they been unwittingly being used to destabilize our state as well? Because the majority of funds from the USAID went to LGBTQI plus communities in South Africa and acting like they are disempowered. And this has also been done in other parts of the world as well, through the media and so forth. So therefore, civil society, see some of the things that Trump has raised, even this matter on victimization of Afrikaners or whatever, we must be telling us crime is a problem. It is a serious problem. So if it's taken Trump for us to be able to do that, so be it. But these matters that Trump is raising, some of them are rooted in fact.
Yeah.
We don't lose about it. And so we must have those discussions. And as civil society, we take a hard look at ourselves, we take a hard look at our government, because people are talking about exporting and doing these things. How long will it be before we beneficiate our minerals? How long will it be that we produce things in this country?
And the issue of beneficiation was brought in by, I think it was Ibrahim, actually, one of our callers. We need to take a short break, but when I come back, we do need to get into the issue of opportunities. We're joined by Tshepo Matseba, of course, who's the MD of Reputation First. There's something to be said, I think, also about what AfriForum needs to be saying right now to help along brand AfriForum. I think that's also an important thing. Tshepo will help us with that, and then Donovan will talk to us. Oscar van Heerden will talk to us about opportunities on the international relations front that he sees there for South Africa on the other side of this. Welcome back, and we continue to take calls on our discussion of the highlights of the week. Certainly relations between South Africa and the US, a big feature of what the country and part of the globe also talking about. So let's hear now from Ganesh in Umnambiti. Ganesh, good evening. Thank you for calling.
Yes, thank you very much for taking my call.
Yes. Go ahead, Ganesh, we're listening.
Yes. Our president, the head of the country, has made a statement. Trump, you keep your country, then we keep South Africa. So why are we even debating? Let Trump do what he has to do. Let us fix our country. Let us stop the corruption, sort our country out. Some of the states of America will be the first to go in line if they got a green card, even their children. So my opinion is, let us fix our country. Leave Trump alone. Thank you.
Thank you so much for calling, Ganesh. Tshepo, could you actually just hold on to that thought that has been raised by Ganesh there around the wording of, your USA, our South Africa, and I immediately think about where else we heard a similar sort of statement. But let's bring in Yanga. Is it Yanga? Yanga calling. Yanga, good evening. Thank you for calling.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm well. Talk to us. What are your thoughts?
Yes, I just wanted to say we have AfriForum and solidarity within our country that says they love the country. It looks like they love a certain color of this country and are thriving on division. And they're getting this attention from everyone now, even Trump. And it's disappointing how Elon Musk is trying so hard for the downfall of this country because he's trying to get involved in everything. We don't know whether in America they captured the president in a way that has never been seen before, because during the first term, Trump spoke about this before he went out. But this time around, there's Elon Musk, who seems to be the one who's much more involved in this and is using his influence to influence Donald Trump on these things. He gave AfriForum and these other groups an ear, and now they feel more empowered to even go on with this. And it's disappointing that even Trump doesn't even check the facts before he tweets and does all these things. It's a wake-up call for South Africa and Africa in general, that we should not rely a lot on America, even though they're a power. And he's threatening now that ALBOA might exclude South Africa and all these things. So I think it's time we focus even more on BRICS nations. Thank you.
Thank you, Yanga. Thank you so much for calling in. Really also echoing sentiments that we've heard from some of our previous callers as well. Tshepo, let me bring you in here because I actually want to read the quote of what the president said at that function. I think it was on Monday. I don't know what Trump has to do with South Africa because he has never been here. He should keep his America and we keep our South Africa. South Africa's our land. It belongs to all the people who are living here. He can keep his America. Sure, the wording there, and as you reflect on that, Tshepo, I asked a little bit earlier about it's not just brand South Africa. There's also brand AfriForum, and here's the reality: it does represent a big part of our society and some of the discourse that we have in the country. Important discourse. What AfriForum has been saying, should be saying, if necessary for you, Tshepo.
No, thank you. No, I think that AfriForum should not be overly elevated as a significant factor in positioning South Africa as a country. I think they've taken a posture for the longest of time. Even though we're a democratic country, they've taken a posture that demonstrates that they are not a patriotic pro-South Africa organization, and thereby, as a result, place the country on many fronts at risk. We know and accept that the US is an important contributor in terms of trade, as a trading partner to South Africa, in as much as Germany is, and China, and even Mozambique. But there is a cost benefit to the relationship between the US and South Africa, where AfriForum is missing an opportunity to at least redeem themselves beyond not accepting or declining this offer for them to move across to the US as refugees. Beyond that, the opportunity that they are missing is to actually articulate the facts about some of the fundamentals about the country, so to serve as a sounding board now for the media and the social media that's reporting incorrectly based on an individual, most of the time, Elon Musk's utterances. They have an opportunity now to say, but this is who we are. This is South Africa. These are the facts about our country, and shift the dialogue away from this mudslinging and shouting and saying that we are very, very unhappy, we are under attack, and to articulate a holistic proposition about South Africa to show the good side and the positive and the strength of the country. That's the one way to redeem themselves, both domestically here in South Africa and across the world, to start participating constructively in dialogue. In fact, they need the new TRC.
Yeah, and just quickly, because I still want your response to your USA, our South Africa, Tshepo.
I think that's it reminds me, of course, of what happened, of course, with Uncle Robert Bob Mugabe. But it's a sense of humor that we find in our president whenever he articulates himself. From time to time, he'll throw in humor. In fact, there was a point where he even said, "I'll invite him to a round of golf," referring to Donald Trump, and we'll chat about these things over a round of golf. But I think the risk of that statement, it can actually pick up a lot of negative headlines and draw parallels between South Africa and what has transpired in Zimbabwe, which is what we want to minimize. So I think we need to be clinical about how we communicate, maintain our authenticity, but be clinical and use the diplomatic environments to engage with the matter of the USA and any other country.
100%. Naledi Pandor saying, former minister saying, we need to use the diplomatic channels. Oscar, I want to bring you in here. We've talked about, and we're going to get into with Donovan as well, some of the opportunities that we see here, but in how South Africa interacts on the global stage, the opportunities that sprout up from this particular moment with the US.
Look, I mean, I think just firstly to say on the AfriForum and Solidarity thing, I think that South Africa, I hear what Donovan is saying about playing into the hands of these right-wingers, but I do think that it's important that South Africa needs to implement the law. And where people are breaking the law, they need to be held accountable and be brought to justice. And in this case, clearly what AfriForum is doing and Solidarity is outside of the law. Donovan mentioned the required legislation. I think that the government needs to act on it, because it is precisely not acting on these kinds of things where people can be racist, can be spreading misinformation, and even encouraging foreign governments to get involved in our domestic affairs. If we do not act, it means we are yet again mollycoddling and putting on kid gloves, and that's why people think they can get away with it. It's the same, by way of example, Naledi, it's the same way we are not acting within the law when our own citizens, Israelis, go into the IDF in Israel, go and murder and cause mayhem, be snipers, kill children and women, etc. And when they come back to South Africa, nothing happens. But we all know it's against the South African law. So if we allow these things to continue, that is when you actually give credence to this kind of behavior where people think they can do whatever they want. I mean, today on X, Ernst Roots and Kali Kriel, I don't know whether it's recent, but they posted that they are on their way to America via Heathrow to go and encourage the American government, Trump's administration, to actually institute these sanctions on individual leaders within South Africa. They boast about it openly, and I do think South Africa needs to make an example. Otherwise, we're going to be fighting these diplomatic fires all the time. Now, as to opportunities, very quickly, obviously, as I said before, with the United States now wanting to be the bully of the world, South Africa needs to think very hard on two things. One, how are they going to engage with the Trump administration for the next 4 years? They need to think about what is our plan, how can we outsmart them, how can we make sure that we get a better deal and not a bad one. Two, we need to think about alternatives. If Trump and Elon Musk is going to continue on this trajectory, then we need to think about how are we going to shift focus, get better trading partners, people that are not bullying us, so that we can actually make sure that both countries, in terms of their national interests, benefit, and not a situation where they are going to continuously tell us how to do it and what to do in terms of our foreign policy. Because if we capitulate to the United States on the question of Israel or Iran or whatever the case might be, rest assured, we will then have to seek permission from Washington, D.C. on every policy decision we take henceforth, and we cannot allow that.
Oscar, thank you so much. Final thoughts, Donovan. Opportunities,
Big time. Firstly, I must say I agree with Oscar. The AfriForum or Solidarity must not get off the hook, but we don't do it in a way we either elevate them, give them credence to this victim status, etc. But most importantly, one of the major green shoots that we have is that there's Donald Trump and his kitchen cabinet, in a sense, or cabinet, which includes Elon Musk. There's the Donald Trump government. There's the United States government as a whole, which is not necessarily in agreement with Trump. And there's the American people. They all do not work in concert. We need to understand and recognize that as South Africa and our South African government. So when you're speaking to Trump, you're not necessarily speaking to the American people. We have experience of this before. We need to build our relationships with the American people, with progressive Americans, with American individuals who are not just those in the Donald Trump universe. And there are people within the United States government as well who do not agree. And the major problem we're going to face as a world is with all these different, and there's going to be more next week, it may be on the European Union for that matter, that Trump will go after them. There'll be another flavor of the week, another crisis that Trump will create. But the major matter is that work of reorganizing the American state is the biggest problem. Because it's basically going, if we look at what Musk does and Trump, they're going to halve that state and they're going to privatize it to the oligarchs. And that is going to have a massive medium and long-term impact on the world. That's what we need to take into account. So therefore, Oscar and Tshepo are also correct. Our state must build its capability, must get other friends, but it must remain on its path. As our president has said, and he must go easy on some of the jokes. Not everybody will get them sometimes. That's it.
That's a great place to leave it as well. Guys, it's been such a pleasure speaking to you, and thank you so much to our callers. You're more than welcome to keep interacting with us via WhatsApp, though. Thanks so much to Donovan E Williams, columnist and social commentator, with the Tshepo Matseba, who's the MD of Reputation First, and Oscar van Heerden, international relations expert. The WhatsApps can keep coming in, 072-110-5584. You're watching Newsfeed PM, the late edition. Let's take a short break. Back in a moment.